The late afternoon sun glowed over a quiet street in Los Angeles. A little girl stood at the corner, barefoot, clutching a small bouquet of roses wrapped in old paper. Her eyes were tired but hopeful as cars rushed past. When a black Rolls-Royce stopped at the light, she hesitated before approaching it. Inside sat Richard Hale, a billionaire known for his arrogance and cruel sense of humor. He rolled down his tinted window, glanced at her, and smirked. "Sell me these roses in Arabic," he said mockingly. The girl froze, unsure if she'd heard correctly. "If you can," he added, "I'll pay you $100,000. He expected her to fail. Just another way to amuse himself. The girl's lips trembled, but she didn't back away. She looked straight into his eyes and whispered, "Ana abia hadihi al-warda." The words were clear and perfect. Richard's smirk faded instantly. "What did you say?" he asked quietly. "It means I want to sell this rose," she replied shyly. For a long moment he said nothing. Something deep inside him stirred. A memory, a loss, a crack in his cold heart that had Richard stared at the girl, unable to look away. Her Arabic was flawless, her tone soft but confident. "Who taught you that?" he asked finally. "My mother," she said, glancing toward the sidewalk where a woman sat against a wall, coughing weakly. "She used to teach languages before she got sick." Richard followed her gaze and saw the woman's pale face, her thin hands trembling. "How long has she been ill?" he asked, his voice lower now. "Almost a year," the girl whispered. "The hospital said we need money before they help her again." Something in Richard's chest tightened, guilt maybe, or something even heavier. He had spent fortunes on yachts, art, and champagne, yet here was a child begging to save her mother's life. Without thinking, he pulled out a stack of cash and handed it to her. "Take this," he said roughly, but she shook her head. "You said 100,000 for Arabic." Richard blinked, startled by her courage. "You've got spirit," he muttered, almost smiling. For a moment he saw his late daughter in her, the same fearless spark. "What's your name?" he asked softly. "Samira," she replied. He hesitated, then said, "Get in." "You and your mother, now?" And felt warmth in years. The Rolls-Royce glided through the city as evening lights flickered across the windows. Richard gripped the steering wheel, his jaw tight. In the back seat, Samira held her mother's hand, whispering softly to keep her awake. When they reached St. Mary's Hospital, Richard stepped out before the valet could open his door. "Get the best doctor here," he ordered the staff. Within minutes, nurses rushed Layla, Samira's mother, inside. As Richard followed, he caught a closer glimpse of her face under the harsh hospital lights and froze. He knew her. "Layla?" he murmured. She turned her head weakly, recognition flickering in her tired eyes. "Mr. Hale?" she breathed. Memories flooded back. Years ago, she had been his Arabic tutor, the one who'd helped him prepare for a deal in Dubai. She had once laughed and told him, "Kindness is a language that never gets lost." Now she lay on a hospital bed, fragile and fading. "You shouldn't have to beg to live," he said quietly. "You once gave me words. Now it's my turn to give something back." Layla smiled faintly, her eyes glistening. "You were always capable of kindness, Richard," she whispered before closing her eyes, finally safe. Weeks later, the hospital room filled with sunlight instead of fear. Layla's color had returned, and Samira's laughter echoed in the halls. Richard visited every day, bringing books and food, pretending it was business, though everyone knew it wasn't. Samira taught him Arabic phrases, giggling each time he mispronounced a word. "You learn fast, Mr. Richard," she teased. He chuckled, realizing he hadn't laughed like this since his daughter died. When Layla was discharged, she thanked him quietly. "You saved us," she said. "Please let us repay you somehow." Richard shook his head. "You already have," he replied. "You reminded me that money means nothing without heart." He handed Samira an envelope. Inside was a check for her education and a single rose pressed between the pages. "For your future," he said softly. Samira's eyes filled with tears. "Shukran," she whispered. "Afwan," he answered with a small smile. As they left, the scent of roses lingered in the air. Richard stood by the window, holding one of her flowers in his hand. For the first time in years, his heart felt alive, not because of wealth or success, but because a little girl with a rose had taught him the true meaning of giving.